Welcome to this episode of GrowthTV. I'm Carolyn Vallejo, and today we're talking about DE&I in the tech industry. Joining me today is Amy Buckner Chowdhry, CEO and founder of AnswerLab. I'm also joined by Laura Held, partner at Shamrock Capital, and Philo Tran, managing director at Clearsight Advisors. And to talk about DE&I first, I want to discuss what DE&I means to each of you, because everybody has a different experience and a different definition. So Amy, let's start with you. As a technology founder, what does DE&I mean?
Well, I think DEI is a really simple concept for me. It's basically, how do we ensure that our organization generally reflects the ever-growing diversity of America, while also making sure we're creating an environment for everyone where they feel included, treated equally, where they have a voice and they have equal opportunity. I think when it's done really well, DEI has a seat at the table at the executive level, and it's ingrained into all of the company's business processes and business units. But when it's done poorly, it's really treated as a check the box kind of function and just sits in HR and doesn't have much influence across the organization. So that's how DEI fits into AnswerLab.
Mm-hmm. And Laura, how about you from an investor perspective? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything Amy said. The way that I think about it is it's representation and support and a voice at all levels and across all functions. And I think this is something coming from the private equity perspective. We have a lot of work to do on this, but it's something that I think needs to be more than just lip service or check the box. It needs to be actually people participating in investment decisions, having support across all functions of sort of development and growth and roles in the organization, from junior levels all the way up to leadership positions at the partner level.
Mm-hmm. And Philo, what about from an investment banking perspective?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think about investment banking as being more finance and quantitative. A lot of our job is working alongside with entrepreneurs and CEOs like Amy to figure that part out, but also help them on the emotional and kind of qualitative aspect of a deal. And I think having a diverse set of perspectives and experience within our team enables us to relate and understand our clients' perspectives a lot better, and I think be more successful in supporting them.
Amy, I know this is something that you are particularly passionate about. So where did that passion for DE&I come from? And can you maybe talk a little bit about how that passion really influenced your search for an investor?
Sure. I'd say that it really came from a set of lived experiences I had myself. So the first being, my husband is an immigrant from India. He came over as a baby, and he had a set of lived experiences as a child that I'm learning from every day. And his lived experiences today in this country. I also, shortly after college, I spent 3 years living in Japan. So I got a taste of what it was like to also be a person somewhat underrepresented within a country, although not the same as the experience folks have in America. Certainly get a taste of what it's like. And third would be, early in my career, I got some feedback of where I could have been a more inclusive leader. And I take that feedback to heart every day and look to atone for it every day in the kind of company I'm building now. So that's why I'm passionate about it, and why I try to take each piece I've learned from those 3 sets of experiences and manifest it in the company, where I'm the cheerleader for DEI, as opposed to having a team member in the team who's the cheerleader and I have to make decisions related to that. Instead, it's, I want to be the cheerleader for DEI within the organization. No one has to convince me that it's important.
That's really interesting, and that's really impressive that you received that feedback and were able to kind of respond and react and now be proactive in this area. I imagine that, not for everyone that feedback results in positive change.
That's true. Some people may bury their head in the sand or say it's not true or have trouble accepting it. But, I received it very early on in my career, and I've had many years to reflect on it, and it's had a huge impact on me.
Mm-hmm. Philo, I want to talk with you for a minute about your experience at Clearsight, helping to find a buyer that aligned with AnswerLab's values and with Amy's values. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, it was fun, but we knew it was going to be challenging at the same time. I've always admired Amy's dedication and passion with DEI, and I knew it was going to be a challenge because there's many investors, maybe many is not the right word, but there are investors out there who have the experience, who are growth oriented, all those things that Amy prioritized. But to her, being dedicated and also showing their dedication to DEI was not negotiable. And we had to look for a firm that not only talked about it, but you could see it in the leadership ranks. And that naturally narrows down the field. And when she mentioned that was critical, we knew we were the right firm because of who we are and our culture as well. So I'm just happy that we were able to work together with Amy to find the right partner and the right deal.
Mm-hmm. And Laura, on your side, what was your reaction to Amy's kind of insistence on finding an investor that really shares those values?
Honestly, it was a real selling point for us because I think it's something that, whenever we're making any investment in any business, a really big component of that is the team and the people and the company that we're partnering with. And so seeing the commitment and dedication and sort of unwavering sort of commitment to making sure that that was a priority for her and the company actually spoke very, very much to the quality of the people in the organization that she had built. And then also really aligned with our values as an organization. I think, Shamrock is just like Philo was saying with Clearsight. I think we're an organization that those are values that are very close to heart for us. It's how we've tried to build our teams. It's how we try and live every day. And so when you find somebody else who has those values and that commitment, it's exciting and you want to lean into that. And I think, that was one thing that we were really excited about when we met Amy and heard her story.
Mm-hmm. Now, Amy, it's really impressive you were able to find these partners that share your values. And it's one thing to be a leader within a business and a founder who really promotes DE&I. It's another thing to really insist on finding an investor partner who shares the same values. So why go through the trouble? Why is that so important to you?
Well, I think we've been for 18 years building this business where our culture, creating a human-centered work culture, has been paramount to everything that we do. It's become our primary strategic advantage in addition to being just the ethical way to grow a business. So to me, if we were to run a process where we'd let anyone into the conversation and we would try to goose up valuation as much as possible, what we would probably be doing is risking bringing on a partner who didn't share those values. And not only would we be risking putting everything that we worked so hard to build at risk, potentially going away with a partner that didn't agree with how we make decisions, but we'd also potentially lose our competitive advantage. So it was critical to me, the ethical thing to do, but also the thing to do to preserve the business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, talk about, that strategic advantage. It's not just about making changes, among human capital, among your team and talent. It's also about making changes at the board level. So I'd love to hear your experience about, implementing some of those DE&I initiatives at the board level.
Well, I'd kick it off by saying I might have been a little frustrating in the negotiation process on this point, because it was critical to me that we didn't just pay lip service to the idea of having a diverse board, but that we actually got it into our legal agreements. But I'll let Laura tell you how difficult that was on getting alignment there on their side.
Yeah, I think this is actually a really important point to highlight because hopefully others can learn from our experiences and what we've tried to implement with AnswerLab. Amy definitely pushed us, and it's challenging, right? Because you're trying to put language into documents that you want to help sort of set the stage and framework for how we're actually going to make decisions in practice that is sort of supported by ESG and DEI initiatives. At the same time, there's sort of all these legal bells and hoops you have to jump through and make sure that you're not doing something else inadvertently that would look like you're discriminating against other groups or violating fiduciary duties or other things along the way. So it actually was quite a complicated topic for us. And what was critical, though, and what we were really aligned on as we talked about it, was Amy and I both said this is critical to how we want to build the board, how we want to continue to build the leadership over time of this company. And so we want to go beyond just sort of conceptually agreeing that that's important and actually putting a framework in the documentation. Mm-hmm. And so where we landed, and we're happy to share language with others if that's helpful, because I do think there was a lot of thought and work that went into where we ended up, is we had very specific principles in the doc that we were going to be using good faith efforts to be making decisions as a board around ESG and DEI, and then specifically for thinking about board composition, whether it's Shamrock board members, which I think is pretty unprecedented in private equity, whether it's independent board members that we selectively decide to have join the board, whether it's leadership positions that we are adding to the company in the future. We will always make sure we start with a diverse pool of candidates, and that we are, of course, we want to find the best person for each role, but we really need to look at it also through that diversity lens, because that's a really important principle for us, and it's also going to make us the best business. And so we ended up with a framework and language that takes it one step further, I think, than just saying, these are things that we care about. It actually says, here is how in practice, when you start to think about filling or changing any of those positions over time, how we'll come back to these docs and we'll use this to govern and make sure that we are actually adhering to that practice.
Yeah, that raises a lot of interesting points about finding the right person for the job, but then also keeping that diversity initiative in mind. So, Amy, let's throw it back over to you in terms of attracting talent in this space. The talent space it's tricky right now. I mean, it's a really competitive labor market for employers. So, focusing on DE&I adds that extra layer of maybe complexity and makes it that much more challenging. Could you share a little bit about your experience and why it's still important to prioritize DE&I despite such a challenging labor market?
Yeah, I think often people like to say that one of the reasons why they can't find diverse talent is because there's a pipeline problem. And anyone who's really tackled the problem knows that's actually not true. You just have to think very creatively about where you're going to find the talent. I'm really glad that our organization has basically asked our head of DEI to be in charge of all of our talent acquisition. And our head of DEI actually sits at the executive table. So DEI is directing the activities of finding talent. What we found in this process is there were so many opportunities to change what the interview process looks like, to change who is at the table in the interview process, to change what the questions are that we ask. And then to say, well, who are we targeting? What places are we going to even find talent? And have we missed out on some regions of the country or cities or areas where we could have found more folks who are of diverse backgrounds? And when we started applying all of those techniques to the mix, we had a pretty dramatic impact on both our candidate pool and the actual number of diverse candidates within AnswerLab itself. So we've been really happy with that structure. So I often think it's just making a few process and structural changes that can make all the difference.
Laura, I know you just touched on this, but is there anything to add there?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about, everything Amy said is critical when you think about finding the right pool of candidates to interview, but I think also the environment that you create within the organization, one, will help attract a more diverse pool of candidates. Amy has built an organization that, the way that the employee base is representative of a much more diverse team, the benefit structure, the leadership team, and the way that's constructed very deliberately. I think there's a lot of signaling and there's a lot of cues that will help show that it's a really great environment to attract more diverse talent versus people just hiring people that look like themselves, which is sort of the common practice. And then, I think about it also from a private equity perspective. People do talk a lot about the pipeline challenge in private equity too. We just need to bring more diverse talent in at junior levels. It's really about creating the environment once they come in the door, as they go through different stages of their own development, different life changes, to make sure that there's support and mentorship and structure to enable them to, be able to make everything work from a home and a work perspective all along the way. And I think often that's where private equity has fallen short is if you look at female representation, for example, you have actually a lot of representation at junior levels now in private equity. You don't see as much mid-level and senior leadership from a female perspective. Part of that, I think, is that the infrastructure hasn't been put in place to be conducive to that. So I think it's really also the environment and the structure and the way that you enable people to do their best work in a way that works for them. And I think Amy's been very deliberate in terms of how she's built that.
Laura, I want to talk more about your private equity perspective here because, Amy and AnswerLab is clearly an example of DE&I done right. And as an investor from the investor side, I imagine that you come across a lot of, potential investment targets that have many different approaches to DE&I. How do you tell the difference between a company that is genuinely pursuing these initiatives versus others that, may just be paying it lip service?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think every company is probably at a different stage of their own journey. And I think it's really looking for, again, sort of the indicators and signals that these are important priorities and that they are taking strides every day to continue to improve. And that is, we spend a lot of time when we're looking at new investments with the senior leadership team, right? You want to sort of see the composition and the values of the senior team, but you also want to sort of understand across the entire organization, everything I was just talking about in terms of sort of environment and composition and even sort of more mundane things like benefits packages and structure that's put in place for people. I think we also, we talk a lot about when we are talking to companies, our values and who we are and how we act as a partner. And I think, you can sort of on both sides or start to figure out pretty quickly if there's a match. And just like we are looking at investments and we're trying to decide where we want to put our capital, the founders or the management teams on the other side, they're also making a choice. And I think it's really important. Like, I think this is a perfect example where, investors that don't prioritize DE&I and don't sort of lead with those values and support that, they're not going to see the best investments because someone like Amy is not going to want to talk to them because it's not something that they embody and that they care about. And so it really goes both ways. I think certainly private equity needs to continue to support and put the infrastructure in place at their portfolio companies to continue to further DE&I initiatives. But also, it's really important for them to also walk the walk because, people like Amy and management teams are going to increasingly use that as an important criteria when they're picking their partners.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to put a punctuation point on this, I've been approached by many private equity firms and strategics over the years. We've had this company for 18 years. And the first thing I would do when I would get a call or an email is go look at that PE firm's team page. And if I saw there was no diversity in the company and no diversity within leadership, I wouldn't answer the email or take the phone call. It's just the first way to know immediately whether or not efforts around DEI are lip service or if they are truly walking the talk. And I knew for us that if they were just paying it lip service, it would not align at all once we came down to key decision-making for the company.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I would add to that too. Amy actually told that story at our annual investor meeting just after we had made the investment. And I think, our LP response to that was very positive because they, we hear from our investors in our fund, how important these types of initiatives are in terms of, not just at the portfolio level where, certainly, we're always thinking about sort of ESG and DE&I, but at the firm level, at the Shamrock level, at the private equity level, how is that firm embodying those values and actually sort of walking the talk? And so I think that was something that really resonated also with our LPs. And so I think it's something that when you think about how this industry is evolving, it's critical.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that evolution, Philo, this question is for you. Do you think cases like AnswerLab's in which a deal really is predicated on DE&I or at least ESG values more broadly, is that going to become the norm? Do you expect to see more of that?
I think being the norm is probably going to be a strong statement, but I do expect to see more of it. I think historically we've had other clients who wanted to emphasize it as part of the transaction consideration, but I think it was somewhat negotiable. I think Amy was really the first client that said, these are the non-negotiable things, including demonstrating commitment to DEI. And so I do expect that to happen more and more. And I can confirm, what Amy and Laura said just now as well, that after this deal was announced, I did have numerous conversations with other private equity firms asking me to explain why didn't I get a good shot at this. And I think after having those conversations, people did admit, it is something that we struggle with and something we have to work on. And this is just another reminder of why this is important for our business.
Right. Amy and Laura, do you expect this to become the norm from your own perspectives as well?
I think it's going to be the norm. That 100%. One of the reasons that I picked Clearsight for handling this transaction for us was that they were best poised to tell the story of this transaction of all the other investment bankers that I spoke with. They best understood what I was really going for here. I believe this is going to be the norm. And that's why I want to have everybody understand this now, right? Because I don't think that the industry is catching up with where entrepreneurs are heading and taking their companies and places they have to take them in order to get the best talent. And if they don't catch up, they're not going to get the best opportunities in the market for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just add, I think the conversation is changing pretty quickly on this. I think, if you think about the composition of leadership teams at portfolio companies, right? They want to partner with firms that share their values and share, their own diversity. And so I think increasingly this is a topic that's coming up very early for us in discussions, is sort of how we feel about this, and really kind of flushing out early, is there a partnership and alignment around these values? And so I definitely don't think it's like the exception to the rule or anything. I think that it is a really key criteria that, again, management teams, firms that are looking for an investment partner are going to be really prioritizing. And so I think private equity firms that don't actually invest in this and prioritize this are going to be left behind.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. And this is definitely an area that's clearly changing very rapidly. And we're very excited to kind of watch that evolution very closely. So thank you all so much for joining us today to discuss this topic.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.